So I'm live on Facebook and YouTube, all being well. Both will record as well as possible. Hopefully, at least one of them will record as well as possible, if not both. I have this strange thing where I like to keep things, which is why I don't edit my videos. But anyway, welcome to my first video for April. Finally, it's almost 11 o'clock at night here, but I'm probably going to start with some negatives, as I normally like to do, and then get more positive as I go along. So I'll probably try and start with the negatives out of the way and then go into positives, but try and keep it as upbeat as possible. But please forgive me if it's a bit negative, because I've got to admit, I'm glad. Well, Italy went out of the World Cup, didn't even qualify for the third time in a row. And sorry for those who don't follow football. This is not really going to be much about football, but it capped off what was a really bad month. I felt it was one of my worst months for a long. My mental health and problems that I get frustrated about, silly things. I know it probably wouldn't frustrate other people, but different things frustrate different people. I know people might say, "Oh, you're like a grumpy person, a grumpy kid, even." And what's a first world problem to me might not be to other people, and that kind of thing. But I got to admit, I'm thankful that March is over. I thought saying March to victory, March to the very victory, as I put it. But I know I mentioned that a bit before. But I'm glad it's over. To be honest with you, I'm glad we're in a new month, a fresh new beginning. Hopefully, and hopefully it'll be a more positive one. But anywho, so yeah, I started with the negatives about having a bad month, mental health problems, Italy losing, not getting to World Cup. Obviously, if you don't like Italy or hate Italy, you're out there, it'll probably be a good month for you. But I guess maybe. But some may not sympathise with me, but fair enough. But just generally, it was a bad month, and then it ended on a really bad month to cap it off. But hopefully, things will get better. A lot of time, I also have my paranoias about God being against me, so hopefully, God will prove me wrong. I know I said that in previous videos, but I hope to talk a bit about that. But I'm going to try and crack on with this, so I thought I'd do it in list form as per usual. Tomorrow, I hope to talk about Africa to network with Asia, which I did initially want to do on Tuesday. So it's going to be a couple of days late. I was going to do it today, but then I decided to do it in this order instead. So I struggled to make that decision. But because I was listening to, I was going to say watching, but I wasn't actually getting to watch, but I was listening to the Italian football. And then I thought I'd do a review on that. Part of me thinks because it's a new month, I want to talk about how I want for all those involved in Italian football to resign. Again, I promise I'm not going to talk too much about football. But all those involved in Italian football, I'd love to resign or be sacked. I wish them good luck as human beings, but I'd love for them to go and just to clear way for new, fresh people, young, hungry people who want to see Italian football do well and like to bring Baggio in, but or people like that, former players. But I'm going to talk more about that on Friday for those who might like football. For those who don't, you might want to avoid that one. I'm going to talk more about football on Fridays, all being well, and not in list form, hopefully this Friday. But anyway, these are pointers number 1 to 10. So again, a new month and that kind of thing. But I thought, as I say, because a new month, it would be good to see a new system in Italy being implemented for the next World Cup and for the future. Hopefully, a fresh new start, rising from the ashes, coming back from the dead and that kind of thing, so to speak. Time football, but like a phoenix or whatever, like a phoenix rising from the ashes. But anyway, number 1, I'd love to focus on as much as possible, and my initial plan was probably to solely focus on Asian empowerment, for Asia to unite together and work together as a continent. Probably not pick the right time to say that. I know I've talked about it in the past. I'd love to have implemented by now, like what I call an Asian alliance. I would call it an Asian Union, but that would get mixed up with the African Union. Again, I know I've talked about that in the past a while back, but I'd love to create an Asian alliance. I call it the MKS Asian Alliance, and that would promote Pan-Asianism and hopefully prevent wars in the future. I'll talk more about that in these videos perhaps, but certainly throughout this month as much as possible, for Asians to work together and be proud of each other's achievements, not just their own nations, but each other's nations somehow, ideally, although I know they're very divided. But I'd love to see them, just like I'd love to see with Africa, I'd love to see Asia unite, and I hope to focus on Asian empowerment and celebrating Asian achievements. Hopefully they'll be proud of each other, but proud but not in an arrogant way. I'd also love to encourage Asians to support Italian football, to follow and support that. Again, I'll talk about it in the past, but I have to remind myself and others. But again, I'll talk a bit more about that a bit later. That's one thing I hope to focus on. Point number 2, I'd love to focus on autism awareness and acceptance, given my use of alliterations. So I'd love to promote autism empowerment, but also autism acceptance and awareness. And like I'm thinking about my use of alliteration, so Autism April. I think actually officially, as it happens, it is Autism Awareness Month. I may or may not be autistic, but I have not been diagnosed as far as I'm aware, but I do have traits that seem like they might be autistic, unless they're just general obsessions. But I hope to talk more about that. Probably won't get into too much, but talking about Asia, I hope to promote autism awareness within Asian families as well. Number 3, also ADHD, again, given my use of alliteration. I think it would be interesting if I found out I had ADHD throughout my life, actually autism. Like, I wonder if I could have like autism, ADHD, dyslexia, dyspraxia, dysgraphia, which I struggle with, difficulty with handwriting, even though I love handwriting, even though I love writing, including by hand. But it's quite scruffy and messy. But I do love to write my thoughts on paper, in spite of my handwriting difficulties and punctuation difficulties and that kind of thing. And even dyscalculia, difficulty with maths, or maybe I'm just a hypochondriac. But it'd be interesting to have those like 5 different learning disabilities: dyslexia, dyspraxia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia, and autism and ADHD. I heard someone describe them as like the D's, as in like dyslexia, dyspraxia, and dysgraphia, and dyscalculia, and that kind of thing. And the A's like autism and ADHD. I'm going to focus more on the A's because it's April. So like, again, given my use of alliterations. So like celebrating success stories, famous people with autism or ADHD, Antric or ADHD or whatnot, and all that kind of stuff, again, throughout the month. And number 4, on that note, ADHD, which is autism and ADHD together. Again, I hope to promote awareness, especially amongst Asian communities around the world, including in Asia itself and all over the world. I love to work with special needs to help people with autism, ADHD, or related conditions across Asia in the future, ideally. And maybe even to encourage autistic and ADHD people to support Tamil. Also, I'd say I'd love to promote peace and love, not war and hate. But moving on, number 5, I hope to work on my goals more generally. Again, this month I was going to focus on Asian empowerment and unity and that kind of thing. Ideally, there are lots of goals I would have worked on in if not in January or February, at least in March. I really wanted that to be like the most positive month, but it's behind it. But hopefully, April will be a much more positive and better month, a new beginning, a fresh start, and that kind of thing. I don't pretty much say that every month, but I thought January, at least get the January blues out of the way. And if the first month of the year was the worst, it'd be fair enough, I guess. And I was hoping each month would get better, but I don't think it quite worked out that way. I suppose because I had so much expectations in March, it didn't work out as well as I'd like. But I hope to work on as many of my goals as possible between April and May. I suppose ASAP really, but again, I really hope to focus on Asian empowerment, and initially, as I only wanted to focus on that one thing, pretty much. But moving on to number 6, celebrating the work ethic of Asians. I know I'm very lazy. I like to work smart and do fun works and smart work, which to me, if you enjoy it, it's not hard work, it's more smart. But you probably always have to have a hard day at the office at some point or whatever. You probably have to do the hard stuff. I wonder if anyone in the whole world has gone through their life without having to work hard. It'd be pretty cool, I guess. But maybe it'd be boring. Maybe it'd be boring if it was too easy, I guess. But also, I'll say Italian football on Fridays and possibly Saturdays and Sundays, like soccer Saturdays and Sundays. I hope to talk about that, and I hope talking about Asia as well. I again hope to encourage as many Asians as possible, and part Asians especially, like myself, to follow and support Italian football, especially maybe to thank me for helping Asia if I help to Asian economies and help them to unite and that kind of thing. But yeah, I'd love to encourage as many Asians as possible to follow and support, and maybe even sponsor and even invest into Italian football and practice together and that kind of thing. I hope to improve Italian football for the future and to rebuild it from the ashes, like, as I say, like a phoenix rising from the ashes. And I'm sure there were one or two other things I was going to include about football, but I'll probably include them again on Friday or in the future in this month. But yeah, I hope to remember and talk as much as possible about Italian football, and hopefully it'll have a new beginning, a fresh start. I wanted Italy to win 3 World Cups in a row, and we failed to qualify for 3 in a row. So it's happened almost opposite to what I said, if not completely opposite. Certainly thereabouts. And yeah, it'll be a rebuild. Maybe Asian, as I say, Asian sponsorship and investment into Italian football, maybe even donating to Italian football. Certainly following it and supporting Italian football to promote Serie A and Italian football generally. Across Asia. Really disappointed that Italy didn't get through, especially as it's in America and Canada, which have big Italian diasporas there and things like that. But yeah, I'll talk more about that a bit later in the week and across this month, and maybe in May as well. But yeah, especially as well, one thing is it was Italy's Unification Day on 17th of March, which I mentioned before, and also fact that Italy failed to qualify twice, and as it's such a football-loving nation, and as it was in March, and it was going to be, as it's going to be, hopefully in America and Canada, hopefully it will work out as well as possible, World Cup, and hopefully everyone will stay as safe as possible. But again, I'll talk more about that a bit later. Also, before I move on to point number 7, I'd love to celebrate works by Asians, like poetry, art, writing, and things designed by people from Asia, especially, and people of Asian descent around the world. Maybe on that note, look at how Asians can contribute to Asia, like the diaspora, like NRIs, non-resident Indians, maybe even lobbying for their tax money to go back to India. But again, throughout the month, I hope to talk about that. Number 7, just like with Italian football, you see by the videos, you might predict what I'm going to say. I know I do try and mix up a bit, but I'd love to see Asians, again, following, supporting, investing into, maybe even donating to, and certainly sponsoring and investing into, and again, following and supporting Celtic as well. And also, as I say, I suppose you could say too many cooks spoil the broth, but also many hands make light work. And so I'd love to see Asians working together to make life easier for each other. Working smarter instead of harder, maybe. I guess maybe both. Maybe you have to do both. I love it. I love to think about someone being able to go through their life without having to work hard and always getting to do what you want. Like, I believe there's no such thing as 100% freedom. I think it's on just like they say with autism, funny enough, it's on a spectrum, like a continuum, I was going to say. But hopefully no one is 100% unfree or 0% free. But I don't think anyone is 100% free either. But I hope Italian teams at Celtic, going back to that, can go and play and practice football or whatever you want to call it, soccer, calcio, footy or whatever, across Asia and with Asians, and hopefully get more practice. I'm just thinking about something else, but again, hope to cover that more on Friday and maybe over the weekend. Also doing more videos on Celtic and reacting, hopefully, to Italian football and Celtic, which I wish I had done in March, but I did struggle to get motivated. Number 8, on that note, I'd love to not give up like I did in March. I gave up a lot of time, as I say. I was going to say this point of 7 because I was thinking like 6 and 7s. A lot of time with my paranoias. Hopefully, it's just my paranoia, anxiety, depression, possible schizophrenia, whatever, and that kind of thing. That I could be a hypochondriac, thinking I've got all these conditions, but I'd say it's you could call it hypochondria, but actually I don't see autism and ADHD as negatives. I just think the way society reacts to such are negatives. There can be some negative traits and such, but with obsessions or whatever, but or things like that, but they can actually be very positive. Again, I hope more about the positives and the negatives and positives, pros and cons and pros, or whatever, whichever order you want to put it in of those conditions throughout the month. But yeah, sometimes I just give up on things because I sort of have this weakness where, as well as wanting to keep things and holding and that kind of thing, and not wanting to create things if they're not, I suppose it goes along with that, like not wanting to create something that's not going to be there in the future. I like to build things that are there to last, otherwise I don't find the motivation to do it if I think it's just going to be deleted or destroyed in the future. But yeah, I suppose I need an end goal. I need to feel it's going to be worthwhile. So maybe finding meaningful work, I guess, smart work instead of hard work, preferably fun work and that kind of thing. I love to have my own creative rooms. I just remember thinking about that. But yeah, I hope not to give up as I did in March, and I've done in the past, and I've said that before. But hopefully this time I'll just stick to things. But if things go wrong, I can give up quite easily. So I've got to try not to do that, and keep going, keep pushing to do the best I can. I might as well just give it the best I've got. Also, going back to Asia, thinking about what Asians dislike or even hate about each other, but also especially what they like and love about each other and what they feel they can improve, and like mainly what Asian nations think are positive about each other, and maybe people who have been to Asian nations talking about what are some of the negatives and positives about Asia, what do they hate and love about Asia or whatever, and that kind of thing. The pros and cons. I normally like to say the best or last. So I say cons and pros and that kind of thing. Positives and negatives, negatives and positives about Asia and that kind of thing. And hopefully they can work together to support each other. Yeah, a lot of time I think God is against me, not my son, all that kind of thing. But hopefully God will somehow prove me wrong about my negatives. As I say, pessimist wants to be proven wrong. And number 9, on that note, I hope I don't be too pessimistic. But I love to raise a profile of Asian poets, artists, and writers, and maybe those from the diaspora as well. Diaspora, or however you pronounce it, but especially in Asia itself. I'm not sure if I want to do the thing where I try and find out about 40 Asian poets, artists, and so-called writers, and then like scribble their names down in a notebook and talk about them, or I just want to talk about ideas on how people can support Asian poets, artists, and so-called writers, including those of an Asian background and so-called those in Asia itself. I'm leaning more towards that, but I'd love to know what you think. Part of me thinks it'd be cool for anyone who watches my videos to comment and say, I forgot to say that, like, please don't hold back your feedback. I normally don't say that at the beginning of the video, but for people to tell me like videos they like me to react to and or topics they like me to cover and things like that as much as possible, themes or whatever, that kind of thing. Again, I'll try not to be too pessimistic, but as I say, I love to support Asian poets, artists, writers, and projects from Asia, structural projects, structural engineering, businesses, and all sorts of things that could benefit Asia, politics in Asia, and that kind of thing. Another idea of mine, because I like a news channel called Politics Asia, where it could be like run as a business, I guess. Obviously, news channels make money through advertising and things like that, just like CNN or whatever. But yeah, supporting everything to do with Asia. Like I like to watch WION, World is One News from India, One News India, and other channels from India, and across Asia. So hopefully empowering Asia as much as possible and helping them to unite. Again, I'd love to create an Asian alliance, the MKS Asian Alliance, which will promote Pan-Asianism and things like that. Again, I hope to come to that in more details. Hope I didn't forget anything. And finally, number 10. Actually, I was going to say something in point number 5, but yeah. I was going to say both point number 5 and 10, and possibly point number 20 as well, but I wanted to give too much away. But I hope to go through my diary. I'm a personal organizer and write up plans and whatever. Hopefully, get my thoughts on a bit more general as well. So I was going to say point number 9. So I think of paperworks in point number 9. P reminds me of the letter P reminds me of a backwards 9, and vice versa, I guess. But yeah, so I would have said it in point number 9 if I remembered. But yeah, I guess the whole point of me getting a diary and an organizer, I don't know why I got both, but I've been struggling to write in them. But the whole point was to be more organized. Like I thought to say to my mum, like, if you want to go to an event or if you want to tell me something, please don't tell me the last minute on a nice last night, but to say, please tell me in advance so I can put it in my diary. Also, I hope to do more reaction videos and hope to empower more younger people and think about my plans for the future more generally, maybe in 5 to 10 year plans and things like that. Ideally, I'd love to get around to that one day, preferably ASAP. If not in April, maybe in May, or ASAP anyway. But anyway, I'm out. Peace and love. Oh my God, what was this?